Imagine telling someone who's really angry and really upset and is very, very enmeshed in their, we'll just say, a victim identity. You know what? That'll pass out of your blood in 90 seconds. Well, what do you mean it'll pass out of my blood in 90 seconds? This happened to me 10 years ago and I'm still dwelling on it. This is very important. This is who I am. That is what this is all about. Who are you? That's the real question. Okay? You're not these things that you're identifying with. If you want to have fun with it, knock yourself out. But eventually, when you get tired of it, realize that that's the soul saying, okay, I've kind of had enough of all this. This is this mess that I've created for myself. Let's choose something different. And then by doing that, as you're going, usually, at least in my process and other people say, but this is kind of boring, there's no drama here. So then you need to find something. Then you need to find something to replace it with. And so think about it this way. This is another thing that's been coming up for me. All those problems that you identify with, in the Yoga Sutras, one of the practices to undertake is conserving your vital forces, and contentment. So if you're wasting all of your energy in all these negative things, you're not getting anything accomplished in the world. If a person can say, all this crap happened to me, but hey, I want to write a book. Or all this stuff happened to me, but hey, I want to start a business or whatever I want to do. If they're so caught up in all this negative stuff, I can't do this because of this, I don't deserve it and whatnot, they're not able to achieve what they want to achieve. However, if they say, yeah, this stuff happened to me, but I'm going to do this instead, where is their attention going? They're going on a constructive, positive route. And all this stuff will probably eventually fall away and say, what was that all about? One way, this is why action is so important in the practice of yoga. One way to overcome these debilitating mental habits is to decide to do something constructive and by God do it. No matter what happens, you get up and you just focus on it and you do it. And eventually, you'll be strong in that regard. You'll have created new grooves. So that's why the yoga of knowledge also involves knowing who you are, but it involves acting in a way that's constructive to the world, being of benefit to the world. And so by doing that, by acting, then you start to know who you are more so. All right. By knowing who you are, you're able to act in a more positive way. So you see, they work together. They're two wings of a bird, which leads you to this infinite consciousness. There's a quote from Yogananda, or maybe Roy. Roy mentioned that Yogananda said it in a gathering one time, that the yogis who renounce the world, who go off in their caves, and try to meditate for however many hours a day. Yogananda said that he had met these yogis, and he said that during the day they argue over philosophical points, and at night they argue over who gets the firewood. Okay, so that said, that is why in the Yoga Sutras and in the Gita and in Vasishtha's Yoga, contentment is considered the supreme liberator. Because if you are content, if you choose to be content, you're not going to give attention to all these things which are just weighing you down that you've identified with in the past.
I have a question.
Yeah.
My name's Heather. I've been reading the Gita and different other things, and I just finished reading the autobiography of a yogi.
Mm-hmm.
And he says in there that God needs to be first. So my question is, or one that I'm struggling with is how to put God first when I'm doing the other activity. If I'm pursuing, let's say you just said starting a business,
right?
So let's say I'm putting my activity into that.
Uh-huh.
How do I also make that a worship practice, or how do I make that?
Okay, yeah, that's good, and that actually goes right along with the chapter that we're working on today. In Lahiri Mahasaya's commentary, what he says that Kriya Yoga practice ultimately is about, to do it right, to do it so that it actually transforms your consciousness, is to act in a way that you are not attached to the results of your actions. So you need to do something, all right? You need to act to be of benefit to the world, and God is inspiring you in certain ways because you would not have the desire if God was not helping to put that out there. Constructive desires now we're talking about. You would not have that desire unless you were being inspired in that way. So the way that you do that is doing your work skillfully. So if you decide that you're going to write a book or start a business, you do it for God. That's it. As you're doing whatever you're doing, as you're driving down the road, as you're eating breakfast, as you're working with your clients or playing with your children or whatever it might be, if you can maintain in your awareness that the only reason you're doing this is not for you, remember you, the individualized self that thinks it's so important, but you're doing it just for God, and that's it. That is how you turn it into that practice, and that's karma yoga. All right, and that's that is one of the main things that people miss about yoga practice. They think that they can do their hatha yoga to be healthy, or they can do their meditation to wake up, but then the rest of the day, they're just caught up in all this stuff and they're not doing it for God. So as Yogananda said, read a little, meditate more, and think of God always. No matter what you're doing, if you're thinking about you're doing it for God, that's how it works. And that's how you free yourself from attachment to the result of your actions. We mentioned that you need to do work. However, sometimes the work you do can create more karma for you. And so the goal there is to be the witnessing presence and to allow that karma to play out, so you're just not attached to it. And I asked Roy about that as well, and he said that when you're letting the karma play out, the things that you've done your best to work on, but you can't quite change or can't quite control, he said that you just simply watch it and give it up to the self, just give it up to God. Say, I'm experiencing this for God. And that's how you let go of your attachment to this karma, so you don't make more karma around it. And then while you're embodied, the way you don't make more karma for later on is that, again, the work you do not claim it for yourself. You give it up to God. So no matter what you do, you give it up to God. You're not going to get the results, so forget about that. In the Gita it says that the yogi is not entitled to the fruits of his actions or her actions. The yogi is only entitled to action. The yogi is only entitled to action, so that's all you can do.
Somewhere in there's a bit of a paradox. Because if you're doing it for God, there's the potential in there for the seed of being attached to that you put God outside of you,
right,
and separate from you.
Right.
It seems that there's potential for attachment for how you're doing it, as opposed to just doing it in
right.
God or...
But you see, if you have that awareness, then you can know not to do that. Okay. You see, because you have the awareness because you just brought it up, right? So then, if it happens, then you would just say, "All right, I see what I'm doing, so I'm going to go back and understand it." Okay. That's still an attachment. So that's a good question. Yeah. So, and in spiritual practice, in India, with the caste system that they have there, Sri Yukteswar comments on the caste system in regards to how it works out spiritually speaking, and he says that the servant class represents the spiritual seeker who can't quite grasp what we're talking about so much today. Okay, and so they are in service to the guru, the teacher, who hopefully does grasp it, and so he's not going to exploit, the servant. So if you're in service to a guru, if you can't get it, but you're in service to a guru who does get it, that is the servant class. And so that's part of the dharma of life. You start there. All right, but then as you start to outgrow that stage, because it is a period of growing, as you start to outgrow that stage, you move into the merchant class. In the merchant class, in the spiritual sense, practices yoga or meditation or spiritual practices to get something out of it. To get away from that anxiety or sadness, or to get more money or whatever it might be, to be more successful within the world. But still, that's the merchant class, and they're still practicing spiritual practices, so it's just where they're at right now. All right. And then again, when they get to the warrior class, spiritually speaking, that is when they realize, I have attachment, like what you were saying. I have attachment to serving God, so now my duty is to just simply do it. Because it is my duty, not for any reason, just because it's what's appropriate to do. All right, so that's the warrior class. And then the next one up is the priest or the Brahmin class. And the Brahmin class is just content no matter what. They're not doing it for any reason. They're just spontaneously living in God. No thoughts about it, nothing. So you see, that's how it goes in stages. So if you know where you are, then that's good, because then you can aspire to the next stage. Okay? All right.